Hello, you're listening to the Neil Lamptey Show. My name's Joey, and I'm joined by Paul.
Good evening, mate.
And Neil.
Hello.
A rare excursion onto a football field for you tonight, Paul, has left you somewhat sore. Is that fair to say?
It's the muscles that you forget you have that hurt the most.
Well, we're joined by Marcus Tugguy now to review your performance.
He'd have been proud with my two finishes.
You did score a couple of what I believe James Maddison would call worldies. You were pretty flames tonight from what I saw.
Was it five-a-side goals or full size?
Queer mix of what he's
seven-a-side goals, yeah.
Oh, they're the best type, they are.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a nice setup.
There was a point where I turned around to Joey and reminded him that I was more David Bell than Callum Wilson in terms of pace.
Yeah, even David Bell is probably a generous estimate of your pace. Enough of our boring lives. We had a game on Saturday against Scunthorpe, which we all confidently predicted 3-0 wins. I didn't happen to catch the score. I take it that's what happened.
I must have.
Yeah, we're on the top of the table again, yeah.
I didn't feel like I thought it was so redundant. I just assumed that's what's happened. No, of course not. We lost 1-0, and I'm going to be giving you a rundown of that. But first we're going to do moments of the week. So, Neil, do you want to go first?
I found it hard this week, Joe. But I've gone for Ryan Kent, and I'm going to treat it as this week. Just getting him in was, although I don't know very much about him, from what I have seen, YouTube obviously, and what people say about him, that sounds like a bit of a coup for us. Premiership starlet, one of Liverpool's best youngsters, and apparently Championship clubs were after him, and yet he wanted to come and play football for us. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you've got to say about him, because I did pick up on one thing, was you still felt that Maddison was better, which says a lot about Maddison.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, he only was on for 30 minutes or so.
Well, that is gospel, and I'm going to go with it. So.
Yeah, no, and I think that's probably what I said, but I'm willing to revise that after watching him a little bit more. I think different players, but we'll come on to that, I think, when we do some of the match rundown. Paul, what about you?
Yeah, it's just interesting, isn't it? We signed Ryan Kent. It's interesting that
you sound like you're filling for time while you think of one, Paul. I mean, you did prepare one, didn't you?
Well, no, it's on this. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, Ryan Kent is a player that, again, sort of very few of us have actually heard of, and it's interesting that Neil's had him as his moment of the week, when basically all these things are looked at, as we discussed in the past, based on what's going on around the club. At the moment, the club's feeling positive. Everyone's feeling slightly happy. Tony Mowbray's everyone's hero. And the sign of Ryan Kent is a coup, where ostensibly he's an untried kid who no one's really seen, and we have no idea if he's good enough. But we're all happy at the moment, so it's a good signing. And it was interesting talking to a Middlesbrough fan on the weekend who had gone through the Tony Mowbray years, and they've now obviously got their new hero, their new manager in charge, who's doing spectacular things with Middlesbrough, and they're playing lovely football and top of the or second in the table. And he went, yeah, it was a nice refreshing change listening to him after the dull monotone of Tony Mowbray. And you're like, well, that's the Tony Mowbray who our fans is the Messiah at the moment. And it's just funny how these things all work out, isn't it? And how
he's still a dull
people
Messiah, though, isn't he?
Oh yeah, but I think at the moment he's still a Messiah. I mean, if I think Middlesbrough towards the end went on a 10-match game run where they didn't win, and it's almost like when Presley first took over, his post-match interviews were seen as being insightful and new, and sort of he spoke honestly about the game. Towards the end, he was talking bollocks, and it was a bit like that with Mowbray, where he's talking sense and everything he says makes sense. And you talk to the Middlesbrough fan, he goes, yeah, towards the end, his continued positivity when we were shit on the pitch was getting really annoying. And it's just funny, isn't it, how things work out? I mean, yeah. And at the end of the day, on the result on Saturday, A, we all expected to win, but B, that's now one victory in 4 since James Maddison got injured. And it's sort of, I know we're still in the top 4 and everyone's wonderful, but it is the game on Saturday against Sheffield and the game afterwards against Bury are really big now, because suddenly if we don't win one of those, suddenly it becomes, the first 3 games become a bit forgotten. It's then 1 win in 4 or 1 win in 5. So it'd be interesting what Joey thought of the game, because obviously Maddison's still injured. So how do we cope? I mean, we obviously coped very well against Burton without Maddison, but in the other couple of games we've sorely missed him. Was there just still a Maddison-shaped hole in the team on Saturday?
Well, we'll come on to that when we come on to it. My first contention of what you've just said there is around we're not out of September and already we've got 2 really big games. I know this is a bugbear of mine, but I do tire of this ceaseless hyperbole when it comes to they are games as far as I'm concerned. I understand the point that you're making, but to describe them as 2 big games, I think is probably somewhat grandiose a description.
But I think if we don't win either of them, you throw away that momentum you got at the start of the season.
Yeah, and that I agree with.
And I think, I mean, obviously there are big games and big games, but in terms of the way that things are looking at the moment, things are still very positive around the club, because we did start the season with those 3 wonderful victories, and Armstrong came in and was playing brilliantly. He got Player of the Month, and everything was swell. If we then don't capitalise that against Chesterfield, then things, that early momentum would have been burst.
I agree with you on that. I'm quite disappointed that neither of you have picked up on either of the 2 things that I'll be having as moment of the week. So, joint moments of the week for me. Firstly, Reader Johnson's trip home to Sheffield on Saturday.
Is that a train? When he jumped on the train?
Yeah. I got a text off The Lonely Season. I don't know if Laurie wants his name out there.
Tell him, Pike.
Yeah, saying Reader Johnson's on the train. He's at the platform with me, and I was like, well, that's not true. And then, of course, it was true. It was very true. And I take it you've all seen the video of him partying with them 13-year-olds, I think, that were drinking excessively. But fair play to all involved in that. I thought it was good-spirited from Johnson, and good to see the lads partying with him and whatnot. The second one was last night. It looked like there was a bit of a sort of dog and candlelight dinner festival at Johnson's house, or possibly at Roman Vincelow's house. Did you see that they were together and enjoying each other's company? Yeah. I love the idea of them 2 cooking for each other.
Canine romance.
Yeah. I really made my evening seeing them 2 together.
Mates.
Anyway, on a more serious note, we'll have a little bit of a thing and then we'll talk about Scunthorpe game. Scunthorpe then, so I soldiered on and headed up there, so it'll be me doing the rundown of it. What Paul was saying about the big games coming up, and that admittedly I argued about, is interesting to me in so much as it's a 1-0 defeat that I feel reasonably sort of comfortable with in a weird way, because of the context of what's gone before it. So I know that we're saying that it's 1 win in 4, but ultimately we're 4th in the league. We were 2nd, I think, going into that game. We've been good so far this season, and actually the way that I've looked at it overall is occasionally you lose matches. It was a poor match overall, albeit with some interesting points about it. And I didn't lose too much sleep over it. Had that have been the 3rd game in a row where we'd played like that and taken 1 point or not, I think I would have viewed it very differently. So to preamble, I'd say that it makes a big difference, a defeat coming in a sort of swathe of decent performances. First thing to note was a Jim O'Brien-less team was an interesting one. Apparently he was ill. And also the big rumour before the game kicked off was that Lee Burge would be dropped for Reece Charles Cook. I know it's those 3 words, but I can never remember what order.
Yeah, it's that order.
And then obviously that transpired to not be true, which I was glad about. It would have felt incredibly reactionary to have just dropped Burge on the sake of Burge dropping everything that that he had against Burton. The team set up as I guess you'd expect it to. The main point of interest in terms of the way that we were set up was that Tudguy sat behind Armstrong up front, using him as a sort of, and Mowbray had talked about it in the weeks preceding about the idea of having Tudgay as a sort of a weird, unorthodox number 10 to hold the ball up. And he played him in that position. And then we never tried to use him, which was curious. Well, Scunthorpe had the majority of the first half, and indeed the majority of the game, but a lot of the time you found that they squandered their chances. They had a great deal of attempts on goal, but they never really came to fruition. And as such, we started most of our possession from Burge, and almost always Burge to Johnson, who occupied a position at left back when we were back in possession. It was odd that he would be used as our principal sort of starting of an attack. And doubly odd that then his sort of method of distribution was almost exclusively to sort of chip it over the top of the midfield, looking for Murphy to... I'm not entirely really sure what he was looking for him to do. And equally, there was a level of diagonal long balls played into Lemiras as well, which seemed so curious to me when you'd got Tudgay there to play that very role, but then to never look for him with the long balls.
Can I just ask you a couple of quick questions
yes, you can,
on this? Was Scunthorpe pressing high?
Reasonably so, but they didn't look like they didn't look like Dortmund or anything. But they were reasonably high up.
But I mean, one of the things that sort of reference back to the Burton game, Burton obviously didn't press us in our half at all, and it allowed Raider and Aaron Martin to pass the ball basically between themselves, and then allow one of the midfielders to drop deep and take it off them and sort of go, no, you two you don't try and play football. And this is, I asked you earlier and you sort of dismissed it, right? The concern was always with trying to build from the back is it then depends on one of your centre halves being able to play football. And with Ricketts at centre half, at least he can carry the ball forward and actually he is someone you can build the game from at the back.
Yeah.
By having him at right back and having Martin and Raider, you don't have that guy at the back who can actually read the game and bring the ball forward and bring your other more talented players into the game.
And so I agree with you. And isn't that interesting then that all of the distribution went left rather than right? Because like I say, I think it's a really pertinent point that you make. But that not once did we look for Ricketts to start the attack. And I thought that Ricketts was the best player for us on Saturday. He attacked really well down the right, especially in the second half when he had the chance. But we looked for him so infrequently. It was odd, I would say. But you're right. I think we could have benefited with him in the middle, but he did have a very, very good game at right back. He's a very accomplished right back. I gather he played the majority of his Premier League football at right back, and probably his career football at right back.
I'm sorry. My other question was I understand what you're saying about playing Tudgay as like a deep lying ball. The thing is, it's what you want out of that player who's holding the ball up is for people to run past him. Well, if he's 20, I know you were saying that they didn't really play through him. Anyway, so it's a slightly mute point. But if you're trying to play someone that role, it seems odd that he's that deep because you've got no one to play off. I mean, the whole benefit of having Murphy and Lemiras is the fact that they can play off another striker. I mean, if you have Tudgay further forward, then he can hold the ball up further forward, and then players can build off him. It seems odd to have him the deeper of the two because, by the sounds of it, they bypassed him anyway. But even if they had played the ball into him, it's not really his gift, is it, to turn around and start? Maybe one of the reasons they didn't hit him that much is because he's not mobile enough or understands that role enough to create the space.
I think I would disagree. So I agree with what you're saying. I think in reality, the way that it played out, I think the way that you would work it when he's ever so slightly deeper is that you would hit them on the counter. So that your long balls would come as a result of a breakdown in play from Scunthorpe that you'd capitalise on, hit it up to him, and then he's got the option of spraying it out to either of the wide players. And we never really pushed them that way. We never really hit them on the counter particularly well, and we found ourselves consistently, like I say, remarkably so, and I've mentioned it already, that it seemed to be that what would happen is that the breakdown in play, the way that they would lose possession was from shooting a wide. That typically was where we got to start again from, and it's very difficult then to try and hit Tudgay in that situation because he's not a big guy, and you can't really aim for him in the same way that if he'd got an element of space if we were hitting him on the counter. So he became a bit of a peripheral figure as the game went on, except for defensively, where he was exemplary again. In defending corners and whatever else. He was effectively been given the Steve Bold role of plucking the ball out of the air, and he does it well. You can see, it's odd, you can see that he's an experienced player. I'm still just not convinced he's all that good, but defensively couldn't argue. Murphy didn't deal particularly well with the way that we were getting the ball into him, understandably, as far as I'm concerned. Lemaris even more so. There was a ball that was played that if he'd have been 5'6", he would have got with his head, but because he's only about 5'3", seemed to evade him enormously. He fair play to him. He did head one off the line though, which was bizarre. We were right behind it, and it was bizarre. I felt like I wanted to cheer for him like he was my son. But him and Murphy kind of just drifted out of the game. Not more so, however, than Armstrong, who I can't remember touching the ball at all. I mean, at all.
He's had a couple of games like that, hasn't he?
But I think he was like that against Wigan. But he scored two. But when he did touch the ball, he scored 2 goals. I thought he was quite not totally anonymous, but I don't think he was all over the place that game. I just thought he was lethal when he got the chances.
I think I've got a selective memory of that game. I just focused so much on him because I felt like he was all over it. But yeah. That wasn't the game I was thinking of particularly, but there have been a couple where, like you say, he's on the periphery, and like if you put him through, you know he's going to do something good. But it's kind of getting him into the match, which is sometimes a struggle.
Yeah.
Which was always going to be the issue with having such a small striker up front, especially against a team who this is the worry, isn't it? Saying it's a big game against Jesfield, which was a new point, but it's a case of like Armstrong is another player who started the season on fire, and I don't want to take anything away from him, but have teams sort of worked him out a little bit, or are we just playing poorly? I mean,
he's been in.
By the sounds of it, we had our first shot on like the 73rd or 74th minute or something. There was a little graph that I don't know if you saw, which was, our first shot attempt was so late in the game.
I think it was a Vincelo header was the first effort off target that we had, and probably the only effort that we had, all told. Certainly, I don't think we had a shot on target in the game. Certainly, I think it'd be unfair to describe us as playing poorly at the moment, because I don't think that's true, and I think it's unfair to say that Armstrong's having a quiet period, because I think he missed the Southend game, he missed the Rochdale game. And that in and outness, and as well, I guess it's unreasonable to expect that he would carry on scoring 5 goals every 3 games. I think if we get 3 games time or 5 games time and he still hasn't scored, then maybe there's a question to ask. But I think at the moment, I'm still very, very pleased with him.
You look at how, sorry, just jumping. You look at how the team's changed as well. I mean, you think about it, there was no O'Brien the other day. There's no Maddison, and those 2 players make a hell of a difference in terms of how everything sort of joins together. I mean, that one thing I was going to ask you is just, did we notice a lack of Jim O'Brien? Because I've been critical of him in the past, but I think this year although Moby doesn't seem to sort of care for him quite as much as everybody else, I think he's played really well so far.
He would be, this might sound daft, I think with Maddison out of the team, I think he would be my first choice attacking midfielder of those 3. Not necessarily because he's the best, but I think dynamically you need him in that 3, because Lemaris is, and God bless Lemaris, because he doesn't have track back as often as he can and try his hardest, but it is largely for sort of, not for show, but it's not that effective because he's my son. O'Brien is more of gives you a different way and is able to effectively drop in a little bit if that's what was needed, and that was needed, I think, on Saturday. I thought we missed him pretty heavily, but like you say, it's kind of very difficult to try and keep changing again when you've got an attacking midfield 3 like that, and then you lose Maddison, and then you lose O'Brien, and you brought Murphy in. It is hard to adapt. Yeah,
and I was just going to say that of the 3, he's almost the one who forces the issue in the game more than the other 2. I like you say, Murphy, if he gets the ball, he can do something good with it. Getting the ball is probably the issue with him. I don't see him winning it back very often. And the same goes for Lemaris. Well, not for the want of trying, but he's just not that impactful in the tackle. But O'Brien, if you need someone to get the ball back in some sense, he's kind of the guy there to do it. So taking him out of the team, and then obviously when he gets the ball, his ideal ball would be to Maddison. He's not there, and it throws things a lot. And I think, I don't want this to seem like too dramatic, but I feel like we do need to find a different way because we don't have the key player available, and we've had to change our defence. And it seems like he doesn't like Phillips, so that throws things off a little bit as well. So it's just kind of, I'm sure we will, because every game is different, but it's just, I don't think we're there yet. I mean, I think one thing that we can learn from the last match and the one before that is we all looked at the game before and thought, well, we won this game and we weren't playing well, so that means, this is different, we're going to win the next match. Maybe if we judged it slightly differently and looked at the game against, who did we beat the game before? Burton. If you looked at that as a whole, we didn't actually play that well.
No.
So the form wasn't necessarily there. So, I mean, that's all I'm going to take from it. Maybe I should judge matches based on actually how we're playing rather than the fact that we got a win out of that somehow.
I mean, the other thing is he's basically gambled on another 18-year-old, hasn't he? I mean, as you say, he's either going to play the same system and hope that Kent comes in and does what Maddison was doing, or he's probably going to have to change the system a little bit, because if Jim O'Brien had been fit, who would have missed out? I suppose that's the question, isn't it? It was a bit fortunate that Jim O'Brien was out, so that meant that Armstrong could come straight back into the team. If Jim O'Brien had been fit, you wonder who he'd have dropped out to bring in Armstrong.
But I think the Tud guy, I think it was convenient for him, bearing in mind that Tud guy played well against Burton, that he was able to keep him in the team, because I think his performance warranted that, even though you would have thought that really, if it was the choice of any of the four, he would have had to have dropped out for Armstrong. But I think that game also then went on to prove that the Tud guy at number 10 experiment probably isn't one that's going to work.
Oh, that's the other thing, isn't it? You feel a bit sorry for Tud guy because of the fact that he had a good game up front and then he's been dropped into quite a foreign position for him.
It's not really. I mean, it's only, I guess just saying that he's like a number 10 and stuff is just a bollocks thing, isn't it? It's like we always talk about with the redundancy of attacking formations. I don't know whether it's really, he's effectively just playing as another striker, just one that's ever so slightly deeper. I don't know how alien of position or sort of tactical switch that is for him. I don't even think he played badly, like I say. I think it was just exclusively down to the fact that we just never tried. We never played to get the benefit out of that system. Just never, we never really articulated it that way.
One thing we kind of need to get our mind around as well is the idea that a player can play well, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's good for the team. I mean, One thing you've seen, sort of like Murphy, he's had some good games recently. If you were to ask me sort of whether you just stick him, I don't think necessarily Murphy being in that team is actually good for the dynamic as a whole. I don't think he sort of fits it as well, but when he gets on the ball, he does some decent stuff. But whether that makes for the very best team or the very best unit, it's not necessarily there yet. Same goes for Tudgay. He had a good game the other day, but give me the choice between Tudgay and maybe putting Armstrong up for a nut, I'd go with Armstrong every day of the week, just because I feel it's a little bit more quality there. But it's hard for us because we've been so used to such poor performances by players across the years that whenever we get someone playing well, it's like, well, you've got to play him. But that might not necessarily be the case. I
think it's a really interesting point, because, and the way that I would put it is that I think Murphy has had more of a individual impact than Lemaris has. But if everybody was fit, my first choice midfield three would be O'Brien, Lemaris and Maddison again, because dynamically that worked so well. The three of them together palpably made a big difference, didn't they? And I think Murphy would score more goals in a season. I think he would be sort of individually responsible for, but as a team and as part of a cohesive unit, I think Lemaris fits that better. And I think that's a really interesting point about Murphy. You're right. But again, I thought he was another player that was unlucky on Saturday because we asked the wrong stuff of him.
But I think also Murphy, I think he's a third act player, isn't he? He's best in the last 30 minutes when the game's more open and players are tired. And it's quite interesting. Like, people come out of the game, one of the last home games we had, and everyone was lauding him. And it was like, well, he was all right up until about the last half an hour when suddenly he came alive and was starting driving with the ball and was really, the last half an hour, he had a really good game. The hour before that, probably a bit hit and miss. And when I saw that, obviously, we weren't there, so these are all things hypothetical, really. But when I saw he'd been taken off after about 60 minutes, it was a case of that's normally when he starts. I know you're saying it's probably justified he didn't have a very good game, but from the games I've seen previously, 60 minutes is where he starts to actually come alive and starts to get involved, and it seemed a bit of an odd decision just because you thought if anyone's going to give you that individual creative spark, he's probably one of those. If you was a choice of him or Fortuna, you came on, whose goal scoring record rivals Richard Shaw, it's a case of I'd rather Murphy was on, even if he's having a bad game, because something might happen for him. He's one of those guys who might ping the ball into the roof of the net from 30 yards, like he did against Warsaw. He's one of those players who is frustrating, but there is something there.
Yeah. I want to quickly wrap up the Scunthorpe game by finishing off some final things. As we got into the second half, and I'm not too sure what time they scored, but around the time they scored, the feeling was going to be whoever bundles one in off a shin at this point is going to win it. And I wasn't surprised when it finished 1-0. I just wouldn't have been able to call which way it was going to go. I think if we had won it, I think we'd have looked at it as quite a dogged performance. I don't think we did particularly badly, but I do think we could have done better, certainly. I thought their goal was... it's not the worst goal I've ever seen, but we could have done better on that as well. Final things I wanted to talk about was the first time that I've seen Ryan Kent and first time I've seen Marc-Antoine Fortuné in a sky blue shirt at least. So starting with Kent, curiously, and this annoyed me to be honest with you, and I don't want to start on a negative note, but this is where I'm starting, so fuck you. I've got to stop swearing. I keep just running. Never mind. Right. We're hoping to win the FBA's here. This isn't gonna. You can't just swear. Yeah. Anyway. Ryan Kent. How as an 18-year-old do you walk into a club? Presumably, did he train on Friday? I would have been almost surprised. And just take all the set pieces. At what point? Who makes that decision? Do they just is that a self-policed thing? Is it? And the main reason I've got a problem with it is, and I'll give him full benefit of the doubt on this. I'm not saying that he's a terrible set piece taker per se. It could be that he was nervous because it was his first game, but his set pieces were awful.
And he took a fair few, didn't he?
He took all of them, yeah. He took free kicks, corners, and like you say, there was a good number that came up, and they were pretty dire. And I don't know internally how that works at the club. Because again, where it comes down to, and the nerve that it touches with me is, I still don't understand why John Fleck doesn't take on.
Never.
Bewildering to me.
Yeah. Technique.
He was, I would say, Ross Barkley-esque in general, quite bustly, quite physical, not huge, but quite upper body and confident looking, very confident looking. Good technique, promising, exciting and promising. Not like Armstrong, Wilson sort of quick, more burst, more explosive. More like young Rooney quick, where you get the impression that he could really, the first 2 or 3 yards he can really burst through. But certainly an interesting prospect. I think it was a bit of a tough game for him to come into as well, because it was on such a knife edge, and they were defending well in general. They'd got, I can't remember his name, I want to say Mallory or something, or Wallace maybe. They'd got a centre half that was big and had a really good game. Jordan Clark played well. And it was a bit of a slightly dull game. It was difficult for him to come into, but then I suppose any game is difficult for him to come in. But he certainly looks exciting. I'd be half inclined to pop him in instead of Murphy next game, or maybe instead of. I mean, I wouldn't be overly averse to. I mean, it could be that he comes in for Tudgay if O'Brien's still not ready. But I don't know. Fortuné, a bit more of a sort of a briefer cameo, albeit I guess not that much briefer. You can see why he's here, as far as I could tell. Looked like a rudimentary hold-up man, but with elegant technique, like a really sophisticated Clive Platt, basically.
I had no idea he was 34.
Yeah.
Old.
But he looked like, and forgive me, Marcus, but he looked like a bit of a upgrade on Guy. Basically, he's bigger, stronger, better with the ball. Admittedly, only in the brief period that I saw, I wouldn't be expecting him to trouble any score sheets anytime soon. But that's only 20. It's only 20 minutes, so we'll see. I can't see him playing very often, personally.
Friend of the show, Kieran Crowley, sort of when we signed him, put on this tweet, and it was just like gushing, and it was like, "Oh my life, we really have signed someone here." And I did what everyone does, and I'd look on the internet, and it was like, Jesus Christ, this guy. I mean, he hasn't scored an awful lot of goals recently, has he? I mean, his goal scoring record makes what was the name of that other clown we had last season? Simeon Jackson look almost Ronaldo-like. It's quite frightening how bad it is.
But he's a funny player. So I don't know if you remember him in his first stint at West Brom before he went to Celtic. But he was playing, and correct me, West Brom fans out there, which I guess leaves you, Kieran, if you listen. I think he was playing on the right of the front three, and looked like a really, really excellent player. I guess why Celtic signed him. I think this is the third time that Mowbray signed him. I could be proved wrong on that, but I think his game has had to change significantly as the years have gone on, and now just looks like a sort of like Kanu at 39 or 50, however old he really was. But I can see something in there. I don't think we'll see him very often. He feels like the sort of player that you would bring on if you were 2-1 up away from home.
I mean, the most amazing thing from last two seasons, he's at Wigan. He played 36 times in the league 2 years ago, and last season he played 35 times.
You can see why they went down.
And he got 4 goals in his first season and 1 in his second.
Is that 1 in 30? Did you say
1 in 35?
Jesus. But are they start? So they definitely start.
I don't know. It just says League Pro. I mean, obviously there might be sub appearances.
I always think Wikipedia's a bit of a swine for that because you're never quite sure whether.
I accept that. It was just like when you just like, oh, okay, you've really bigged him up now. I'm expecting to see some sort of genius on the pitch. So I'm hopefully he'll live up to Kieran's praise because
Like I say, he doesn't strike me as a first choice player. I'd be very surprised if we see him very often, but there you go, we'll wait and see. That's all I've got to say. I'll ask for any very brief final questions before we move on.
No.
Nope. Good.
No.
Quick musical sting, and we'll do Only Covvect.
Yeah, this is... who wants to go first? Who wants to go second?
I'll go second.
All right, Neil. Question 1 or question 2?
1, please.
All right, what links these 4 items? West Ham United.
Football. Next one.
Fulham.
Let's be obvious. London football teams. Keep going.
No,
I'll get there.
Aston Villa.
Okay. Okay, give me the last one.
And Newcastle United.
Ooh. Sorry for this silence. I don't have an idea. No, can't get it. Sorry.
Joseph?
Give me the 4 again so that I can pretend that I've even got a modicum of a
Fulham,
clue.
Aston Villa and Newcastle United.
Is this the Cov question or the non-Cov question?
This is the non-Cov question. This is your general...
This is general football knowledge. So, final time, what was the first one? West Ham, Fulham,
Vile,
Villa,
and
Newcastle. No, go on.
All winners of the Intertoto Cup.
Intertoto Cup, wow. That was that tiny cup, wasn't it? Literally tiny.
But they have 3 they have 3 winners each time, don't they?
Towards the end, they only actually had 1 official winner.
Oh, really?
It was basically the last team left in the UEFA Cup were claimed as the Intertoto winners. But before that, then they had a different system altogether.
Mm.
Which is why Villa won it one season, because basically, as you said, about 8 different winners. Anyway,
Days.
Joey, this is a bit loosely Coventry City, but it's a Coventry City question. Miguel Lelera,
No.
Christian Chivu,
The Roma Romanian player.
Yep.
No.
That isn't the answer. That's you.
No. I just want to make sure that that was who you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go on.
Petr Cech.
Oh man, right. Who was the first one?
Miguel Lelera.
Lelera.
Well, his surname's spelled Llera.
Oh right, okay. Then Kivu, then Czech.
Yeah. Do you want the fourth one?
Yeah, go on.
Connor Thomas.
Not a clue at all. Neil?
Oh,
This couldn't be more helmet related, could it? It's full blown helmet.
No.
yes. These are all players who must wear or wore skull caps during their career.
Oh man, how did I not get that with Petr Cech and Connor Thomas? Good work.
And can you not remember Shivu wore it? He never had the bottom bit done up, so it looked a bit more risque.
No, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
I can't remember what he looked like, but yeah, there you go.
His missus is hot.
You
There you
dare I say it, encyclopedic knowledge of footballers' partners. You're a wagspert, if that's such a thing.
Yeah, well, normally if you write into some footballer's name, they normally then sort of comes up with their Wikipedia page, and then next to it will be some. Down the right hand side of Google, they always have other people you might be interested in, and one of them's normally some hot chick. That's normally the wife, obviously.
The third biggest draw of traffic to Sky Blue's blog is actually the search term Michael McIndoe's girlfriend. There we go.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. 7 years worth of blogging and that's still coming up, top of the list. I don't even remember writing about it.
Yeah.
All right.
Go on, Paul.
So, Joey?
No, Paul. No,
Neil.
Neil.
Question 1 or 2?
One, please, again.
All right. Then the non-cov question. What comes fourth in this sequence? Portugal, Romania.
Fourth.
Or Portugal and Romania.
This is non-cov. All right.
This is non-cov.
Blimey, give me the next one. I might be able to get it.
Portugal.
So Portugal, Romania, Portugal.
What comes fourth?
Oh. My mind's gone a blank.
Do you want the next clue?
Yeah, go on then. I should get this.
Didn't
I think I know.
qualify.
It's. I'm going to help Joey out, but it's definitely something to do with a World Cup or Euro or something like that. It's who England lost to, but I don't know. It's something to do with the final game that England lost in the World Cup or something like that.
Go on, Joey.
I can't piece it together, but I'm guessing it's European Championships, is it?
Yep.
Is it teams that were...
Yes.
Yeah.
So who comes fourth?
Oh, right.
In 2012, who knocked us out of the Euros?
Oh, no.
On penalties.
I think I know that. Yeah, I do know.
2012? So Ukraine? Not that I'm sorry, I'm saying it was in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Oh, man. We beat Ukraine in the group, didn't we?
I honestly can't remember.
I think we beat Ukraine 1-0 in the group. Then did we have Sweden in the group?
Yeah, we had Sweden.
Didn't Andy Carroll score in that game?
Bullet header, yeah.
Yeah, and Danny Welbeck scored that
Welbeck
good goal. It was 3-2, weren't it?
Yeah.
Then who did we have out of the group then? God, this must be so boring for people. Although I can imagine an enormous amount of people screaming at the thing. Neil, if you know it, then chip in.
It's Italy.
It is Italy.
Oh, piss. I thought that was what's it. I thought I was getting confused with it being in the World Cup.
All right, so...
Oh, God, yeah, because I watched it in Lineker's bar in Magaluf. It was that,
Did you?
Yeah, it was that dire 0-0 draw.
I was at Isle of Wight festival, scraping through on the 3G. It's horrible. My bill after that was awful.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It was, It was the game where the highest pass, the most regular pass combination was Hart to Carroll, wasn't it? by about a country mile. It's pretty much the only form of attack we had in that game. Yeah, it was awful. Oh man! All right, yeah, go on then, Neil. Your question.
Which is yours, isn't it?
Oh, it's yours, Joey.
Oh, is it mine? Okay, yeah. Sorry. Go on.
What comes fourth in this list? Bury 4.
Is it the amount of goals Leon Clark has scored in a season? No.
I don't know why I shook my head. It's like the other day, Jane said to Mary, and Mary just went, pfft. And it's like 3-year-olds just putting you in your place. That's quite funny. Yeah, anyway, Derby 3.
No, go on.
Huddersfield 2.
Who was the first one? Bury?
Bury 4, Derby 3, Huddersfield 2.
Oh, wow. Okay. Is this something that's happened this season?
This is something that happened on Saturday.
Okay. No, I mean I've got a vague idea, but I can't imagine Bury having had 4 red cards in a game, so I'll pass it over to Neil.
It's something to do with ex-Cov players, so 4 ex-Cov and Bury or something, and so I don't know. Was it Bournemouth 1? I don't know.
Not really. Right sort of thing. However, it regards centre-backs or defenders. At one point, Bury had a back 4 of Reece Brown, Nathan Cameron, Chris Hussey, and Peter Clark.
Wow. No way, really?
And they also had on the pitch at one point Pugh and Leon Clark. They had 6 ex-Cov players, but the back 4 was all Cov. Derby had Richard Keogh, Cyrus Christie, and Stephen Warnock as 3 of their back 4. Yes. Huddersfield had Craney and Elliot Ward as their 2 centre-backs.
Oh, that's a wicked partnership.
So all you need to do was name any team in the country who had a former Coventry City player in defence. So you could have had Palace, Shrewsbury, even Scunthorpe.
Cardiff.
No, Cardiff didn't. No,
Ben Turner.
Played for Cardiff this season. No, I don't know what. No, and Gunnarsson's on the bench.
Okay.
Point. But no, I don't. Ben Turner must be injured or something. He's not in the. But yeah,
I would have thought that pretty much every team in the Football League has got an ex-player playing in their defence, bearing in mind the turnover of left backs that we had 2 seasons ago.
But most of them were shit and didn't go anywhere.
Well, you say that, but they keep rocking up everywhere, don't they?
Well, yeah. So there you go. That's
a good one.
At one point, Bury had a complete back 4 of ex-Cov players.
Nice, good start. Great start.
Thank you.
Final musical sting, and then we'll do some Chesterfield preview with Neil. Neil, what have you got for us?
What have I got? My BBC reading has gone through the mill again. Right. Chesterfield finished 6th last season, following promotion to League One. So once again, showing what a little bit of momentum can do for any club. I had a look at our head-to-head because I always think that's really interesting, and then I realised that we've not played them in about 50 years, apart from last season, so it's not really useful. But we were unbeaten with them last season, so home draw and a 3-2 victory away. Can't remember who scored in that game. Should have looked. As for this season, they've had a good start. 7th place, won 3, drawn 2, lost 2, and the win would put them above us. They're 2 points behind. Their really recent form is pretty patchy like us. Only 1 win in the last 4, not won in the last 2 games, and their last 2 games have been a 3-3 draw with Colchester. They were 3-1 up in that, and a 3-2 defeat to Wigan. So plenty of goals hanging around with them at the moment. Looking through the team, Sam Morsey is a captain. Apparently he's an enforcer, was a target for Cardiff in the summer, and has got 3 goals this season, which I find weird for an enforcer. So I guess he just does everything. So yeah, look out for him. To the untrained eye, i.e. mine, they've made a shrewd move in the transfer market for Sylvan Evans Blake.
No, it's not him.
No, it says it is, though.
I don't think it is. I think it's his. Is he? I think it's another Ebanks Blake, isn't it?
This can't be because I read it. I always make sure I don't get the wrong Ebanks Blake. And then hang on, I'm googling as we speak. Cause...
Maybe I'm thinking of someone else. There is.
Yeah, I think there is another Ebanks Blake. But I think Fatty Banks is
at Chesterfield.
Let's get
Chesterfield.
There. Yep, just checked, and he is at Chesterfield. 2 goals this season.
Okay, very good. I wanted to. Sorry, is there any more? Am I cutting in? Is there more Chesterfield preview or?
The preview just consists of a couple more players who we should take note of.
Okay, yeah, go on.
Lee Novak has come in from loan from Birmingham, which is a league hire, which means he must be good. And he scored in the last game. And also Jay O'Shea, Irish chap, who has 3 goals already this season as well. So he'll be willing to score if he needs to. So yeah, there we go. Preview. Ta-da.
Also on the player run, they've got Ian, I support Cov Everett. He must be about 82. I'm talking to players who must be Richie Humphries, who I think made his debut before you two were born.
Richie Humphries. It wasn't Richie Humphries chairman of the PFA about 10 years ago. That's not him, is it?
Yeah, the guy who scored. I think he scored a wonder goal for Sheffield Wednesday back in the day.
He's 37.
Actually, Richie Humphries.
Yeah. He now plays. He's playing for this. On Wikipedia, is left back, left, centre midfield, forward. Because as he's got older, he's just regretted. And you know, our mutual friend Matty. Hello, Matty from Huddersfield. He's a good friend of Richie Humphries.
Oh, really?
And they go because I mean, this is how old Richie. He was playing when Gavin Strachan was still playing. They played together at Hartlepool.
Bloody hell!
Oh. Yeah, he's 37 years of age.
That doesn't seem like it makes any sense. Has anyone checked his birth certificate? Is he Nigerian?
It's just So I thought that was worth throwing in because I mean, if he plays on Saturday, you are seeing literally sort of a walking.
It's like being at a museum.
It's crazy.
Before we do predictions,
anyway,
I want to briefly alert you to something that I was thinking, sort of mulling over the other day. So far this season, we've played Wigan and then Rochdale and Millwall, which I think we all confidently predicted defeats for, give or take. Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
Why not?
Crew, I think we'd have probably said we'd have won. Maybe, yeah.
Home, yeah.
Yeah. Walsall, I think there'd have been sort of maybe a draw, maybe some people saying a win.
Where are you going with this, Joe?
I was going to say I can't remember. So
final couple, a draw against Southend. That I'm sure at home against Southend we'd have all predicted a win. Scunthorpe, we all said 3-0 wins. Burton, I guess, was mixed. I think we're badly showing ourselves up here this season.
It's almost like football isn't predictable.
It is. I don't know whether we're cursing it. But with tradition, I am going to predict us to lose 3-0 this week, solely just to see whether it means that we win. But Neil, let's have yours.
Oh shit! I'm dropping my microphone. No, I think we're going to win because it's at home and it feels good at home. So 2-1.
Sounds good, Paul.
I have no idea. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. I'm getting slightly concerned that without Madison, our plan B isn't really good enough. That's because I'm a miserable bastard.
Yeah, I would not miserable necessarily. I'd just say impatient. I just think I think he needs to learn from what Presley fucked with all the time, which was just changing the team over and over and over again. Yeah. Just decide who he's going to play in the next 5 games unless somebody gets injured, which presumably he might have already done, but with with people getting injured at this time of the season, and stick with it and let them get bedded in, because I think they probably had a good period of time over pre-season playing roughly as that team, and then just gets taken apart a little bit. I think they'll be all right. But I don't know why, because we never are.
Yeah, and that's my worry is if we lose on Saturday, we will hear a lot of same old City on the radio.
Well, we're not going to, so that's all fine. We're going to go and do a little bit of any other business now. The major one, probably the only one, is the Football Blogging Awards are back. Yes. Yeah. You can, you've got opportunities to vote in all sorts of categories. Your best bet is by having a look at footballbloggingawards.co.uk. where you can fill in the form on the website. It tells you what the categories are, what the classifications are. So there's a young football blogging podcast, but it's got to be under 21. So that excludes Neil by a month to a couple of years. So we want you to, we're begging for votes, basically. You can go over there and vote on there. If you go to our Twitter page, I'm going to pin the tweet to the top of our thing that shows you, that's a link that you can click that basically does the entire job for you. We would really, really appreciate it. We got there last year. We had a great night. Neil won his award, which was spectacular. We want him to win again. And we want to win, basically. We want to win an award. That's all we're in it for.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'd really, really appreciate you doing that. You can vote, like I say, on the website. The website is footballbloggingawards.co.uk. In fact, just stop, do it now. You'll probably listen to this on your phone. You can probably do it. And go there, fill it on the form, and vote for us on Twitter, which I think are the only two ways that you can do it this year, which is helpful because we don't really use Facebook, do we?
Nah, shit.
Stop living in the...
Take that, Zuckerberg.
Yeah. Stop living in the past. What, MySpace? What? So I think that's all we've got. Anyone else?
No, done.
No, sounds like it's done. If you want to get in touch with us, it's at Neil Lamptey Show on Twitter, or it's neillampteyshow@gmail.com on email. And that's us done. So thank you very much for joining me, Paul.
Cheers, mate.
And thank you, Neil.
Warmest regards.
And thank you for listening and for voting, listeners. Bye-bye.